296B class of Sustainable Development Studies Department of Mindanao State University Graduate School welcomes you to the webinar entitled Streamlining Various Developmental Issues in Region 12. We appreciate all of you for taking the time and joining us in this webinar. We would also like to extend our gratitude to our instructor, Dr. Ava Claire Marie O. Robles, in making this event possible. As you may already know, this event is a part of a series of webinars for this year's SDS 296B class. Now, without further ado, we will begin the program. To start off, may I direct your attention to your screens for the prayer and the singing of National Anthem.
Mahal na Panginoon, bago ang lahat, nagpapasalamat kami sa mga maraming biyaya na ibinibigay mo sa amin. Humihingi kami sa harapan mo na sana ipapatuloy mo ang mga biyaya sa kasulukuyan naming okasyon. Bendisyonan mo ang mga naghanda para dito sa okasyon na ito para ang mga layunin nila ay makamit. Bendisyonan mo lahat ang mga taong dumalo sa okasyon na ito para maging aktibo sila sa lahat ng aktibidades. Bendisyonan mo rin ang mga mahal namin sa buhay na nag-iwan sa aming mga tahanan at ilayo mo sila sa panganib. Lahat na ito ay hinihiling namin sa ngalan ni Jesus. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Hayang magiging, labas ng sinakalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiging, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nalagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng pangaw, ay hinatang tulad, awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang lang atawad mo'y nagumpay na naghihindig, makituwin at karagya kailan ang may maghihindig. Lumalang araw ng waragin pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling ko. Ang bigaya ng pagkay magami, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Nakamute ka po, Ma'am Gwen.
To formally welcome us in this event, may I request one of the esteemed professors under the Sustainable Development Studies Department, who is also the current advisor for SDS 296B. Please help me welcome Dr. Ava Marie Claire O. Robles.
My courtesy and respect to the Dean of the Graduate School, Dr. Wilfred Bidad, our esteemed resource speaker, Sir Ian John Lagare, Ms. Ariane Shane Nebran, and Engineer Jad Nicole Leonard. To our hardworking technical team, to our participants, friends, good evening. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this third virtual session with the theme Streamlining Various Developmental Issues in Region 12. I believe all of you will agree with me that in this time of pandemic, resiliency is one of the key ingredients that we must aspire in order to live sustainably. As such, the SDS program gives premium to initiate this webinar as one of the means for us to be more resilient amidst these challenges. So as an overview, our three speakers will discuss updates on the pressing issues that the Soxargen region is encountering, especially in this time of pandemic. So this webinar will serve as a platform to address this challenge. To our participants, we would like to express our delight for being with us. I hope through this session, you will capture the essential knowledge for you to be well informed on the pressing challenges that we are facing and eventually help us to be more resilient. So once again, I would like to say welcome to our third webinar session and mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you so much for your very motivating message, Dr. Ava. Moving on to the next part of our program, let me introduce to you our first speaker. He completed his bachelor's degree in AB Sociology at Mindanao State University, General Santos City in 2013. A licensed environmental planner, a licensed professional teacher, and a former project development officer at the City Mayor's Office, LGU Jensen. He is now taking up a master's degree in sustainable development studies at the Mindanao State University, General Santos City. Currently, he serves as the Population Program Officer 1 at the City Population Management Office at LGU Jensen. Ladies and gentlemen, here to present the session 1 entitled Population Growth in Region 12 and its Impacts in COVID-19 Pandemic, please help me welcome Mr. Ian John M. Lagare.
Again, this is Ian Jan M. Lagare, Population Program Officer 1 of the City Population and Management Office. And tonight I'm going to discuss about population growth in Region 12 and its impacts to the COVID-19 pandemic. So first, the Philippine Statistics Authority said the Philippine population growth has been slowing down, but the numbers of Filipinos are still growing. So in short, PSA is like stating us that may problema tayo. Kasi despite the decline in average annual growth rate, lumulabo pa rin yung mga bilang ng mga Pilipino. And in the perspective of sustainable development, hindi yan pwede. Kasi we always adhere to the fact that yung limited yung resources natin. And if kung limited yung resources natin, dapat limited din yung number of consumers. So in the case of Region 12 naman, we can see that the population growth rate, including the doubling time, is moderate. 2010 to 2015, yung population growth rate is nasa 1.94% lang. Meanwhile, yung doubling time or the number of years before the current population to double is nasa 36 years. So kung during 2015, nasa 4.5 million ang Soxargen, it would take 36 years para umabot ng 9 million, or we have to wait 2051 to do for that. Pero I don't think that we should wait for it to happen kasi nga, as I've stated, problema kung malaki ang population ng isang lugar. So are these figures something that we need to worry about? Of course, oo. Like I've stated, limited yung resources natin. And hindi naman ibig sabihin na pag dadami ang populasyon ng isang lugar, is dami din yung resources. Hindi naman ganun yun. Like, halimbawa, sa bahay nyo, pagdadagdag ba kayo ng isang BB kada taon is lalaki yung bahay nyo or lalaki yung mga sahod nyo or dadami yung pagkain na nakakain nyo. Of course, pwede yan mangyari ha. But at the same time, we have to face the current realities na it's very unlikely kasi yung mga economic opportunities natin ngayon is very, very slow. And yung chance na magkaroon ng economic vertical mobility is unlikely, lalo na may mga pandemic ngayon and magkakaroon ng recession left and right. So here, we can see that may mga factors tayo that contribute sa population growth rate. Hindi lang sa Region 12 but the entire country. So according sa PSA, yung women of reproductive age natin is nasa average of 860,000 per year. So problema din yan kasi kung isipin mo, kahit a small percentage lang ng 860,000 na yan ang mga anak, like for example, 10% of that would give birth, it would still add thousands of live birth sa isang taon. And problema yan sa kung saan sila nabilong ng mga localities or local governments. And when it comes to regional fertility, National Demographic and Health Survey indicated na yung mga pinakamahihirap na mga regions natin or yung mga mostly rural regions or agricultural regions, sila yung may pinakamataas na regional fertility. Kasi based sa mga sociological studies, many of the families within these areas, mas favorable sila na mas marami sila kasi additional manpower yun sa kanila when it comes sa kanilang livelihood, diba, sa pagsasaka o pangingisda. Mas madaming anak, mas marami ang tutulong sa kanila to do their things. And meanwhile, the contraceptive use naman, only 4 out of 10 women are using any modern method of contraception. Kahit nga yung mga kasal na, is konti pa rin yung mga nag-a-avail ng mga ganito na methods or birth control tools. So, it is yung mga the rest is sila yung pinaka-susceptible when it comes sa multiple pregnancies and unwanted pregnancies. So next, we'll talk about the impacts of population growth to COVID-19 pandemic. So during the time that I made my report, last June 24, ang Region 12 is may 15,000 cases of COVID-19 and there are 12,000 recoveries and 287 deaths. And in the recent weeks, nakita natin na nag-explode yung biglang may explosion when it comes sa COVID-19 cases natin. It's very likely na may influence ang population growth when it comes sa sudden wave of new COVID-19 cases. So one of the first impacts is effects in viral transmissions. Ang sabi ng World Health Organization and other leading health institutions, non-pharmaceutical interventions are still the most effective way of preventing the transmission of COVID-19. So ano ba yung mga non-pharmaceutical interventions natin? Ito yung pagsusuot ng face mask and face shields and of course social distancing o yung paghiwalay-walay natin to other people. So of course, when it comes to social distancing, mas madali dumistansya pag konti lang kayo sa isang lugar or within a particular space. Halimbawa, sa bahay nyo, pag may nagkaroon ng positive case dyan, tapos konti lang kayo, mas madali ang social distancing, mas madali yung pag-iwas. Whereas kung marami kayo sa isang bahay, tapos biglang nagkaroon ng, may isa sa inyo nagkaroon ng COVID-19, there's a good chance na lahat kayo is magkakawawaan. And it's the trend na nakikita ng Janssen ngayon. Yung mga recent cases namin is yung pamilya-pamilya na. So, yung isang family, may nagdala siya ng COVID-19 galing sa workplace niya or sa kung saan man niya nakuha, then nadala niya sa bahay nila. And apparently, ito yung mga households na maliit yung bahay nila. So, mahihirapan sila na mag-distance or mag-isolate from one another kasi common yung mga bathrooms nila or yung mga dining areas nila. At the same time, nag-room sharing sila. And next is yung impacts on contact tracing and case monitoring. Bale, the region itself, nag-implement na siya ng mga contact tracing mechanisms like yung CCTS ng South Cotabato. But at the same time, there's no guarantee na yung contact tracing natin is foolproof or thorough siya. Kasi kahit may mga applications ka na ganito, we have to. Again, this is Ayan Jan M. Lagare, Population Program Officer 1 of the City Population and Management Office. And tonight I'm going to discuss about population growth in Region 12 and its impacts to the COVID-19 pandemic. So first, the Philippine Statistics Authority said the Philippine population growth has been slowing down, but the numbers of Filipinos are still growing. So in short, PSA is like stating us that may problema tayo. Kasi despite the decline in average annual growth rate, lumulobo pa rin yung mga bilang ng mga Pilipino. And in the perspective of sustainable development, hindi yan pwede. Kasi we always adhere to the fact that yung limited yung resources natin. And if kung limited yung resources natin, dapat limit. Again, this is Ayan Jan M. Lagare, Population Program Officer 1 of the City Population and Management Office. And tonight I'm going. Again, this is Ayan Jan M. Lagare, Population Program Officer 1 of the City Population and Management Office. Yeah. Pero population growth to COVID-19 can be found on our health institutions and systems. For example, General Santos City has the highest number of hospitals in Region 12. But still, the city government ordered a border lockdown because of the local IETF has recommended to the mayor that such a measure has to be undertaken. Umabot sa point na isa na lang ang available na room for COVID-19 patients sa Dr. George Pirayake Hospital, which is the public hospital of Jansan. And it magnified the fact that despite the number of hospitals in the city, may mismatch pa rin when it comes sa existing number of hospitals and the number of patients that it caters. Of course, we have to emphasize that limited lang din yung mga number of health workers na pwede mag-respond for COVID-19 patients. Hindi naman ibig sabihin na doktor ka is pwede ka na mag-respond sa COVID-19. Yung ibang doktor kasi iba yung specialization nila. So, konti lang talaga yung parang may technical expertise or experience in handling things like pandemics. So the next impact is on the outcomes of physical supplies and resources. Way back last year, the local governments implemented lockdowns or border lockdowns sa kanilang mga respective na jurisdiction to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So, to help their constituents na hindi makalabas ng bahay or hindi makabili ng mga basic needs nila or nawalan ng trabaho, nagbigay ng mga relief packages. Pero that situation alone magnified the fact that hindi pala bigyan lahat. Kasi unlike sa mga natural disasters like bagyo or lindol na iilan lang yung mga naapektuhan, sa COVID-19 kasi lahat tayo naapektuhan, mayaman ka man or mahirap. So, it's the responsibility of the local governments na to provide sustenance to their constituents. Kaya ang problema, kahit may pera, sabihin natin may pera yung isang LGU, pero wala naman siya mapagkunan ng bigas, ng isda, or ng mga canned goods, wala pa rin. Kasi nga, saan ka naman kukuha na yung mga producers nagsarado din and other cities kept their supplies to themselves kasi nga natatakot sila na mawalan sila ng supply. So, here, mas madali nakarespond yung mga LGUs na first, may enough resources at second, yung may access sa mga basic necessities. And it goes to show na kung limited lang yung number of people na kailangan mong i-cater, mas mabilis ka talaga makaka-respond. And it's quite apparent kahit nasa mga barangay level na distribution kasi other small barangays, nabigyan naman agad lahat, pero yung mga nagka-aberya is yung mga malalaking barangay na may maraming population na umaasa sa kanilang mga barangay LGUs for relief distribution. So, next, possible adversities in the vaccination efforts. Right now, roll out na yung Resbakuna program ng national government natin. Pero it's very evident na konti pa lang din yung nababakunahan. Kasi nga may mga prioritization. At the same time, limited yung nakukuha natin na vaccines from sources. And it goes to show na kahit may vaccination program na, it doesn't mean na lahat agad mababakunahan. Of course, one of the contributing factors niyan is maraming tao pa rin ang takot magpabakuna. But at the same time, marami din gusto magpabakuna na hindi mapabakunahan kasi nga hintayan pa ng mga supplies. So mas madali sana ang vaccination program kung ang population natin is hindi masyadong malaki or hindi masyado tayo nag-worry when it comes sa number of individuals that we need to cater. So the next question is, what can we do or what are the possible interventions that we can implement to control or mitigate population growth problems? So first, family planning and birth control tools. These are still the most effective methods to do so. And believe it or not, we are encouraging people that are outside in the context of marriage or yung hindi pa na magkasal na to apply or do the same thing. Kasi whether you like it or not, marami ng tao ngayon ang nag-engage sa premarital sex. And sa office namin, we don't really care if you do that. Nagkakaroon lang kami ng pagkaalam if yung sexual activities mo is nauuwi sa unwanted pregnancies and unwanted marriages. And second, nagkakaroon kami ng pakialam or yung entire local government, nagkakaroon lang ng pakialam if yung mga sexual activities nyo is nauuwi sa sakit like HIV and AIDS. May COVID-19 na tayo ngayon, so it's very impractical na magdagdag pa tayo ng isang outbreak naman in the form of the sexually transmitted disease. So next, yung another method that we can do is changing our perspective when it comes sa marriage. Okay lang po talaga na magpakasal na hindi muna magkaanak or mag-raise ng kid. Kasi sa economic situation natin ngayon, talagang mahirap siya. Although kahit sabihin yung kakayanin, pero when it comes sa totohanan na magkakaroon talaga kayo ng struggles financially, emotionally, physically. So if you think you cannot handle those burdens for the meantime, pwede naman na wag muna. Or in some other cases, you might want to consider adoption kasi mas practical siya in some sense kasi hindi ka nagdadagdag ng bata but instead you are helping those na iniwan na ng kanilang magulang na magkaroon ng family. And the third thing is we need to change our perspectives when it comes sa role ng mga babae. Kasi may gender stereotype tayo na pag babae ka, ang role mo is dapat magkaanak ka. Lalo na sa Pilipinas. Tatanungin ka na, uy, tigulang na ka ba? Anong wala pa mang kay anak? If you are going to compare it with developed countries like United States or Canada, where women are very empowered that their decisions are based on their finances or their general capacities. They won't engage in marriage or they won't engage in having children if they believe na hindi pa nila kaya. So sa atin kasi, basta dapat abot mo ng ganitong edad, dapat magkaroon ka ng anak or dapat kasal ka na. Hindi dapat ganun. Women should be empowered enough to make their own choices. So that's all for my report tonight. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, you can ask in the discussion portion later. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that insightful talk, Mr. Ayan. Indeed, population is a fundamental aspect of our society. However, it requires to be controlled to ensure that we can achieve various sustainable development goals, as well as prevent branching complications that are caused by overpopulation, such as poverty, economic disparity, and burdens in our health sector. Now, moving on to our next presenter. She is a graduate of BS Fisheries major in aquaculture from Mindanao State University, General Santos City in 2015. She is a registered fisheries technologist and currently serves as the Environmental Management Specialist 2 at Municipal Environment and Natural Resources Office at the local government unit of Maitum. Here to discuss challenges encountered on the solid waste management implementation amidst COVID-19. Please give a warm welcome to Ms. Arian Shane Vinabran.
So good evening, everyone. So tonight I will discuss to you the challenges encountered on the solid waste management implementation amidst COVID-19 pandemic. So first, what is solid waste management? So solid waste management is a term that is used to refer to the process of collecting and treating solid waste. It also offers solution for recycling items that do not belong to garbage or trash. As long as people have been living in settlements and residential areas, garbage or solid waste has been an issue. Waste management is all about how solid waste can be changed and used as a valuable resources. So the Philippines has endeavored to improve its management of solid waste through the passage of the Republic Act 9003 or the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act that provides for a systematic, comprehensive, and ecological waste management program to ensure the protection of public health and the environment. So currently, about 35,000 tons of municipal solid waste are generated by Philippines daily and more than 8,600 tons per day in Metro Manila alone. So the containment of the spread of COVID-19 pandemic and limitations on the commercial activities, mobility and manufacturing sector have significantly affected waste management. So waste management is critical to human development and health outcomes, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. The invaluable service is provided by the waste management sector ensures that the unusual heaps of waste that poses health risks and escalates the spread of COVID-19 is avoided. The municipal waste management and COVID-19, for the general adaptation to municipal waste is, of course, it's coming from our household waste on the municipal. So if the household with COVID-19 positive people or within people in mandatory quarantine, so the sorting rules at home is the mask, gloves, tissues, and disposable cloth collected with mixed waste. In some cases, tissues and handkerchiefs were before collected with bio waste. So mixed waste, so bin with pedal, two or more sealed bags, recyclables, and bio waste with mixed waste. So in some cases, 72 hours wait before the waste disposal. So we need to schedule the waste collection on a certain day. So for the waste collection, so the frequency collection modulated according to specific needs, the stock shortages, health and safety measures, reducing efficiency, mixed waste, and bio waste prioritization. So for the mixed waste, possibility of ad hoc services keeping their waste separated from the municipal stream or specific containers. So iba rin po yung sa other households natin na they are free from the COVID-19 or from people na nag-mandatory quarantine. So residual waste, business as usual, 2 or more sealed bags. So the recyclable bio waste. So separated yung truck na nag-contain ng mixed waste with the COVID-19 positive people coming from the household and for the people without those COVID-19. So hanggang papunta sa waste treatment. So either incineration prioritized continue with business as usual when they are highly automated. So residual waste, ito yung pattern natin. So the COVID-19 pandemic disaster, unlike the earthquakes or tropical storm, will not be over in a matter of hours or days. It will be with us for another year at least, and possibly for several more years. Indeed, we face the inevitability localized additional natural disasters occurring the pandemic. So for the waste generated through households, so it increased the amount of mixed waste, including infectious waste due to low levels of segregation at source, discontinued provision of formal informal waste management services, the increased amount of plastic waste due to lockdown, suspension of reusable items in store, the lack of inventorization estimates an amount of household hazardous waste being generated, the increased littering, illegal dumping and open burning, the suspension of recycling activities, mixing of infectious waste such as gloves, masks, tissues, and other waste, the discontinued provision of formal informal waste, the increased negative impact, especially to informal sectors. So for the waste generated through healthcare facilities, one of the challenges is the increased amount of infectious waste generation, the service interruption of healthcare waste management services, the improper healthcare waste management treatment in place, suspension of recycling activities, and the insufficient capacity for treatment and disposal. Life below water is disrupted as marine habitat wrongly conceives the non-biodegradable plastics or the polypropylene from face masks as food. So thus improper disposal of face masks to the aquatic environment poses a great threat to both wildlife and marine life. So good governance and policy making responsibility play an important role throughout the emergency management cycle, from preparedness and readiness to response to eventual evidence-based recovery from COVID-19. So proper management of healthcare waste needs to be based on the waste hierarchy, or the 3 Rs, or the reuse, reduce, and recycle. So for the healthcare waste management, the COVID-19 waste should be managed whenever possible using existing protocols for infectious and healthcare waste management as stipulated in national and international guidelines and manuals. So the enhanced treatment and disposal capacities of medical waste in epidemic areas is urgently needed. So we need to identify the gaps in capacity for medical waste treatments and disposal in different locations, such as urban versus rural areas or large informal settlements. So identify options for interim and emergency treatment and disposal, accounting for local constraints and considering COVID-19 infection concerns, in addition to broader environmental and human health impacts related to improper disposal of waste. So we need to ensure adequate supplies of waste, collection bins, bags, and transportation trolleys, the PPEs, the training and capacity building of the staff involved in COVID responses. And to our household waste management, so continuity of management services should be prioritized. Contingency planning should include securing necessary human resources and equipment, as well as reducing risk for workers in local government, private companies, and the other informal sectors. So special attention to the municipal solid waste management related to COVID-19 is required to mitigate risks of people involved formally and informally in the municipal solid waste operation and those benefiting from such services. So we need to separately collect waste generated from households with COVID-19 positive occupants or suspected cases to those households. So the most preferred management solution is not to produce the waste in the first place by avoiding wasteful ways of working. Although waste minimization is widely practiced at the point of its generation, such as separation of hazardous waste from other wastes, a proper plan that adopts purchasing and stock control strategies can also result in a reduction in the amount of waste produced. So let's say no to plastic and reduce, reuse, and recycle. To source segregation, don't waste the waste, let's segregate. So we need to know our waste from the biodegradable, non-biodegradable, to hazardous, to medical waste. And waste segregation is included in law because it is much easier to recycle Effective segregation of waste means that less waste goes to landfill, which makes it cheaper and better for people and the environment. It is also important to segregate for public health, so use double bag for potential infectious waste, separate and keep recyclable materials at source before being discharged. So let's cut or destroy use disposable PPEs to avoid their reuse. Let's seal the plastic bags when it is two-thirds full, and we need awareness outreach for other people. Same with the discharge and collection. The waste material must only can be removed by licensed waste contractors and taken away for recycling or disposal. It is an offense to discharge certain materials into the environment, so stop opening of waste bags by waste pickers. Awareness outreach are of actions for communities and informal sectors. So for the transportation, adjust the collection service scheduled. So consider temporary licensing to capable waste management services provider. Consider intercity cooperation, ban opening of plastic bag for separation, provide and instruct workers on the proper use of PPEs, and of course maintain social distancing and keep windows open if possible, then disinfect collection vehicles and the collectors as well. So for the treatment, so for the municipal solid waste generation sources, so waste segregation at source, consider the biodegradable and recyclable waste to residual waste. For the household waste with COVID-19 infections or quarantine, mixed waste, 72 hours wait before collection, waste segregation prohibited. So makeshift services require increasing, and for the waste disposal is for incinerator. Sustainable management of medical waste is problematic and amplified, especially in emergencies like the COVID-19 pandemic, due to the novelty of the global pandemic. Modification to existing waste facilities to control the unusual medical waste and its associated viral spread effect requires adequate information on the amount of medical waste generated, hotspots for waste generation, and available treatment facilities. So the improper management of medical waste has the potential to expose patients, health workers. So good evening, everyone. To discharge certain materials into the environment. So stop opening of waste bags by waste pickers. Awareness outreach are of actions for communities and informal sectors. So for the transportation, adjust the collection service scheduled. So consider temporary licensing to capable waste management services provider. Consider intercity cooperation, ban opening of plastic bag for separation, provide and instruct workers on the proper use of PPEs, and of course maintain social distancing and keep windows open if possible, then disinfect collection vehicles and the collectors as well. So for the treatment, so for the municipal solid waste generation sources, so waste segregation at source, consider the biodegradable and recyclable waste to residual waste. For the household waste with COVID-19 infections or quarantine, mixed waste, 72 hours wait before collection, waste segregation prohibited. So makeshift services require increasing, and for the waste disposal is for incinerator. Sustainable management of medical waste is problematic and amplified, especially in emergencies like the COVID-19 pandemic, due to the novelty of the global pandemic. Modification to existing waste facilities to control the unusual medical waste and its associated viral spread effect requires adequate information on the amount of medical waste generated, hotspots for waste generation, and available treatment facilities. So the improper management of medical waste has the potential to expose patients, health workers, and waste management. So injuries, infections, toxic consequences, and air pollution. So how to properly dispose face mask and face shield. So first, let's remove mask and shield from face. Be gentle so as to not disturb liquid and solid contaminants in the mask and shield. So cut the used face mask. Directly dispose used face masks and face shields in a separate waste bin or bag if available. Dispose them in a yellow bag or bin marked as hazardous waste or infectious waste. So wash hands immediately after disposing the used face mask and face shield. Therefore, let's not forget to reuse, reduce, and recycle. That's it, and thank you for listening. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Arian. Certainly, the outbreak of coronavirus disease or COVID-19 in late 2019 is far more than a global health crisis. It is affecting our societies and economies and has a deep impact on our everyday lives. Inadequate and inappropriate handling of healthcare waste may have serious public health consequences and a significant impact on the environment. So let's be responsible in our own ways and let's not forget the 3 R's: the reuse, reduce, and recycle. All right, moving on our last speaker. He is a graduate of electronics engineering at Mindanao State University General Santos in 2014, a licensed electronic engineer, electronics technician, and a licensed environmental planner. He is currently taking up a master's degree in sustainable development studies and currently serves as the economic development specialist 2 and an ICT administrator at the National Economic and Development Authority or NEDA Region Office 12. Everyone, here to talk the NEDA study, an analysis on region's high poverty incidence despite GRDP. Please help me welcome Engineer Judd Nicole L. Leonor.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Gwen. So, can I have a confirmation if naririnig po ba yung audio?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Allow me to share screen po muna. So, is my presentation po nakikita na po ba?
Yes, sir.
Pero hindi pa siya naka-presentation mode, sir.
Pero hindi pa siya naka-presentation mode. Sadali lang po.
F10.
Ayan po, naka-presentation mode na.
Wala
Still
pa.
no.
Can I request na lang po Mr. Ian Lagare to please share my presentation? Mr. Lagare?
Opo.
So, once again, a pleasant evening to each and everyone. So, allow me to render my presentation on my report on the analysis of the high causes of high poverty incidence despite the GRDP growth in Region 12 for the period 2010 to 2015. So, if you may be asking, no, why 2010 to 2015, we're already at 2021. So, this study was conducted in 2017 to 2018. And poverty statistics are being surveyed and collected once every 3 years po, no? So the latest data for poverty statistics is 2018. And since this study was made in 2017, so yung available natin na statistics is for 2010 to 2015. Also, the period was chosen because it was on the period wherein the GRDP growth, not just of Region 12 but of the whole Philippines, was greatly improving. No, we were the second fastest growing economy, only next to China during this period. No? And also, this is in line with the planning period during the Aquino administration, which was in 2010 to 2016. Next slide, please. So for an overview, no, the Region 12, otherwise known as Soxargen, is one of the poorest regions in the country. No? So in 2012, poverty incidence in the region came second highest at 37.1. So it is a sad fact, no, na ang Region 12 is the second poorest region in the country, only next to Maguindanao. No? So the national poverty rate for 2012 is at 30 and tayo po ay nasa 37.1, so napakalayo po natin. So though poverty incidence declined in 2015 to 30.5, it remains relatively high compared with the rest of the country. So although nag-improve po tayo in 2015 with a poverty incidence of 30.5, still we are above the national poverty value of 21.5 in the year 2015. So ganun po serious yung poverty problem in Region 12. However, the Philippine economy, Region 12 included, has grown rapidly in the recent years. No? As stated earlier nga po, during the start of 2010 to the period 2015, napakabilis po ng growth ng ekonomiya ng Pilipinas. No? However, the benefits of the growth have yet to trickle down to the many households in the marginalized sectors. No? Therefore, this study would wish to investigate why the continuous high poverty incidence in the region despite mataas po yung ating GRDP growth. Next slide please, Mr. Lagare. So for the rationale of why we have conducted this study, so first, sige po, Mr. Ayan. So since 2010, the Philippines has posted rapid economic growth as stated nga earlier. Next po. So while income poverty in the Philippines has reduced by 13.8 percentage points from 35.4 in 1991 to the 21.4, again this is for national, no, poverty remains a lingering phenomenon, no. So for many years, although marami na policies, programs and projects na na-implement by national government agency, nahihirapan pa rin tayo to reduce the poverty incidence in the whole country. Next. So technically, when we were presenting the poverty statistics especially for the region, maraming local chief executives, no, ang umaangal because for them there was a lot of programs implemented during their tenure and yung economy ng province nila ay nag-grow naman daw. So what was the basis daw po? Bakit yung province nila remain poor? So notably, the province of Sarangani and Cotabato were really against the results of the poverty statistics, no? Because for them, the economy grew. So why is the poverty still a big problem? So this was one of the reasons why the study was conducted. Next, Mr. Ayan. So poverty incidence in the region has basically remained at the same, no, proportion, seemingly reducing from 37.9 in 2006 to only 37.6 in 2015. So at mga 0.6 lang yata yung na-reduce sa poverty natin from the 9-year period. So that's a big question mark on why is that happening. Next slide please. So to start, let us talk about the economy and poverty in Region 12. No? So according to PSA, I would like to reiterate that PSA is an attached agency of NEDA. So PSA is technically our data collecting arm, and NEDA interprets the data collected by the Philippine Statistics Authority. So according to PSA, GRDP is defined as the aggregate gross value added of all producers, no? So technically, meron tayong tatlong sectors for GRDP. It's the agri, hunting, fishery, and forestry, the industry, and the services. So when we take into account all the economic outputs of these sectors, yun po yung GRDP natin. So to cut the short short, hindi ko na po i-explain how we will compute GRDP. Yung abbreviation na lang ng GRDP is Gawang Regional dito Pinas. So everything that is done within the regional area, lahat ng output nun, lahat ng ekonomiya nun is considered as GRDP. So for Region 12, no, this is for 2019, the services sector accounts for the largest share at 40.2 of the region's GRDP. No, it is followed by the industry at 36, and lastly by the AHFF sector. So this is as of 2018 na GRDP natin. Pero mamaya makikita nyo on what was the GRDP performance of the region for the period 2010 to 2015. Next slide please, Mr. Ayan. So ito po yung table, makikita nyo po. For 2015 to, however, for 2015 to 2016, yung industrial and origin growth rates natin, mas mataas na po yung services and industry compared sa agri, hunting, forestry and fishing. So why am I discussing this? Because mamaya marirelate natin itong sectors sa poverty, sa employment poverty ng ating mga constituents. Next slide please. So when we talk about poverty incidence naman po, poverty incidence is defined as the proportion of families or individuals wherein their per capita is less than the per capita poverty threshold, no? So I think for Region 12, our per capita threshold is at 9,800 per family, no? So kung mas mababa yung kinikita ng family nyo below 9,800 per month, so you are considered as a poor household. Next slide, please. Okay. So dito po makikita nyo yung poverty incidence ng bawat province for the period 2009 to 2015, no? So ito yung poverty statistics natin. So halos nasa 30, 20ish and 40ish ano talaga siya. So technically 3 out of 10 families, no, na nasa Region 12A is considered as mahihirap. Next slide, please. So for 2018, yung poverty incidence na lang daw po natin is 22.8. So when we talk about income and poverty, hindi po natin pwedeng iwasan na hindi pag-usapan yung employment, because employment generates income. So therefore, it is important to take a look at the employment labor and employment indicators in the region. So for our employment indicators for 2010 to 2015, makikita po natin na the total population, the working population of Region 12 for 2015 is at 2.7 million, no? 2.798 million. So I think in 2015, the population of Region 12 is at 4.5 million. That still includes the Cotabato City because hindi pa sila na-identify na part ng BARM. So out of the 4.5 million population of Region 12, 2.7 yung workable force natin. The labor force participation rate, this is the percentage of the population na either na may trabaho or naghahanap ng trabaho. The unemployment rate, ito po yung statistic wherein sa total natin na workforce, which is 2.798, ilan doon yung walang trabaho, which is it recorded at 3.5 sa 2015. Yung underemployment naman po, which is we considered as the mismatch, no? So kunwari nag-graduate ka ng isang course, however yung trabaho mo is considered as not matching or not fitting doon sa current mo na trabaho, that's considered as underemployment rate. So medyo mataas po ang sa atin, indicating a job mismatch in the region at 23.2. Next slide, please. Sige pa po, Mr. Ayan. So kung titingnan po natin, this is for the employment distribution sa 2015 to 2018 po, no. So I would like to reiterate na we have 2 periods being discussed here, 2010 to 2015, and yung current, which is kung kailan ginawa yung study, which is 2017 to 2018. So kung makikita nyo po sa table, karamihan po ng mga employed people sa Region 12 is nasa services and agriculture, fisheries and forestry sector na. So mamaya makikita po natin yung relevance why I am presenting this. Next slide, please. Kung makita natin kanina sa 27 to 2018, mas maraming employed person sa industry sector and sa services sector. However, when we took a sneak peek into the 2010 to 2015 statistics, makita po natin na mas mataas yung employment share ng agriculture for Region 12 during the period, no. So kung makita nyo dito, the share of employment by major industry, mas mataas po yung sa agriculture. So during that period, the economy of the region is very dependent on agriculture, no. And if titingnan nyo yung employed persons by major occupation group, makita nyo na napakaraming laborers and unskilled workers during that time. So technically, karamihan ng laborers and unskilled workers is nasa agriculture sector. So this statistic alone parang makaka-assume na tayo on why continuous yung poverty incidence ng region natin by the nature of the employment na lang. So next slide, please. So looking at this, the available statistics alone was not enough, no. So for the methodology, no, to be able to look into the research with depth, quantitative and qualitative approaches were employed by NEDA and the commissioned entity, which is the ASCEND, coupled with an examination of the available secondary data from PSA, no. So one part of the methodology was to conduct a household survey, no. A total of 4,240 households in Region 12 were interviewed, wherein we gathered wherein we gathered demographic information of the poor households. Technically, NEDA and DSWD engage a memorandum of agreement so that NEDA can use the listahan ng database. No? We all know that very tawag po nito, confidential yung list ng poor households sa Region 12. Therefore, we signed a memorandum of agreement with the SWD in order na makuha talaga namin yung ang mga address and profiles ng mga poor people in Region 12, and sila po yung magiging respondents namin for this study. Next slide please. So based on the 360,000 na beneficiaries ng listahan during that time, 4,000 po yung napili namin across the 4 provinces and 5 cities of the region. No? The selection was the selection of the sample households were involved a two-stage stratified random sampling design with barangay and household as the primary and the secondary sampling unit. So hindi ko na po i-discuss dito yung actual na questionnaire because mahaba po siya and mataas-taas po siya. So technically we include key informant interviews and also focus group discussion. The questionnaire was reviewed by NEDA and it was approved by PSA because when you conduct study involving poverty and everything, so you need the survey based on the standard of PSA, which PSA also follows a global standard in conducting surveys for the poverty statistics. Next slide, Mr. Ayan. So for the results in analysis, ito po yung na-observe namin. First, about 3/4 of the sample households belong to rural communities, no? Compared mo sa urban communities wherein at least 10,057 households, no? This is similar to usual poverty profiles in the region that suggests that poverty is more of a rural phenomenon. So dito pala makita nyo na due to the fact na mas maraming poor households sa rural communities, yung available din na employment nila is more on the rural side, which is more on agri talaga. As far as their level of education is concerned, ito din po yung na-observe namin, about 9 out of the 10 have achieved schooling. Schooling lang po ito, we are not indicating na nakagraduate sila. Some elementary, which is 36%, elementary graduates 14%, some high school, and junior and senior high school graduates, no. So these profiles on their education attainment already gave us an indication as to why poverty is persistent in the region, because technically if hindi ka nakapagtapos, mahirapan ka talaga mag-land ng high paying job. So although we are not discriminating the agriculture sector, because if tutuusin, marami namang high skilled job sa agriculture sector. However, the fact na hindi sila nakapagtapos and kulang yung level of expertise nila, they land on agriculture related jobs that are very low skilled or low paid. Unfortunately, then most respondents are working, no, in low paying jobs which they consider as their primary source of income. They earn an average of 5,351 gross income every month. So this is way below our poverty threshold of 9,800 per month, no. So napakalayo, ay around 4,000 or almost 50% yung discrepancy nila para ma-consider sila as non-poor, no. So a large majority of them who come from the rural areas primarily engage in unskilled labor and farm-related activities, no. So farming 25% and farm workers 15%. So kung makita nyo dito, 33.4% are elementary works. So this result alone, makita na natin, no, kung despite mataas yung GRDP growth natin, the fact na nasa elementary works pa rin yung mga constituents ng Region 12. So hindi nila nararamdaman because nga later may explain natin na the agriculture sector is one of the most underdeveloped sectors sa region natin ngayon because driven na nga tayo ng industry and services sector. Next slide please. So to discuss further, for the employment sector, no, 51% agriculture, 44%, 7% fisheries, work in the agriculture sector, no, where the rest are in services and industry. So ito yung profile ng ating mga respondents. It is important to take note that at this stage, despite the growth in other non-agricultural sectors, majority of the responding households in the survey are dependent on agriculture. So ito na po yung sinasabi namin, no. Kung titingnan nyo yung GRDP growth natin, nag-grow ang ekonomiya ng region sa industry and services sector. So napag-iwanan yung agri sector. So kahit nasabihin natin na nag-improve yung ekonomiya natin, the fact na karamihan sa poor households are engaged in agriculture sector, so hindi po nila ramdam yung paglago ng ekonomiya ng region. So this may be attributed to the level of education that the adult members, yung mga head of families nila, no? However, yun nga sinabi namin, hindi naman po natin pwede sabihin na lahat ng trabaho sa agriculture is low-paying jobs. The fact na naging factor din po yung education attainment nila, no? So nahirapan silang mag-land ng high-paying jobs because they have low level of education. Next, please. So still sa employment sector, no? We will take into the words of Mr. Rene Ofreno, the former Undersecretary of DOLE, no? So agriculture is a very huge catch basin, no, for employment, no? Workers with low skills cannot be easily absorbed, however, by high-end employees because yun nga po, high-level jobs require high-level skills and type of education, no? So isa sa tinitingnan na solusyon is i-migrate natin yung elementary occupation workers, yung mga agriculture workers, into higher level jobs, or we will enforce high labor wages sa mga ganitong klaseng trabaho. However, this requires a national intervention wherein a national and regional agencies as well as the private sector could come into a compromise, no? Because minsan mahirapan tayo na i-force yung private sector na taasan yung sweldo ng mga low-paying jobs. And meron naman tayong mga labor organizations na nagpaprotesta to increase the minimum wage para sa kanila. So napakahirap nito gawin because we need to go with a win-win situation. Next slide, please. So for the household income and expenses, no, as sabi nga namin kanina, majority, 72% of the survey respondents receive less than the 10,000 monthly income, no? So 28% sa kanila receive less than 5,000, while 44 receive between 5,000 to 9,999. The average household income in Region 12 is 8,500 8,000 pa nga po pala yung ano dito, no, average income. Urban households receive a slightly higher income with 8.9 than rural households. Next slide, please. So in terms naman of expenses, 53% sa Region 12 are spending less than 10,000, while 45 spend between 10,000 to 49,999. Yung average spending ng mga households sa Region 12 is at 12,314. So isipin nyo na lang po, if ganun yung kinikita nila and then the average spending should be 12,314, so hirap na hirap po talaga yung mga constituents natin and yung mga poor household natin to elevate their level of poverty, no? So household expenses are mostly for food, which include rice, commodities. So basic pa lang po ito and hirap na po sila. Next slide, please. So when we ask them whether their income from year to year improved since 2010, 54% answered po that yes, nag-improve sila. Pero however, it was 54% po nag-answer na nag-change daw yung income nila. However, it was a negative change, no, because the reasons for change pala are attributed to unemployment, the change in number of dependents kasi dumami na yung mga anak nila, yung mga armed conflict, we all know we are suffering insurgency problem in the region, and also the risk to income shocks, no, especially disaster. In addition, when asked whether they're able to save a portion of their income, most respondents replied in negative, no, 89%. So nakita nyo naman kanina, expenses pa lang to their income, mahirapan na talaga sila save. And without the interventions of the government, mahirapan talaga sila na to cope up with their needs and even to provide capital sa kanilang mga business. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the social conditions and shocks to the livelihood of those respondents, aside from the low household monthly income, poverty conditions were exacerbated by various shocks to livelihood, such as the natural disasters and socio-economic changes experienced in the region during the study period, no? So drought, typhoons, floods, and increase in market prices, mas nakakaapekto pa ito sa poverty ng ating mga constituents. Next slide, please. So the question here is, wala bang interventions yung government or wala bang mga services na ginagawa? Meron, di ba? So while numerous programs have been implemented across administrations by the national and local governments, outcomes have not taken firm root, particularly because of the lack of complementary among the pro-poor policies and programs, no? Aside from the implementation deficits in these interventions, no? So while the project implementers will be the first to claim that the success of these programs, at the same time, critics will also point out deficits in the implementation. So yes, marami tayong na-implement na program. However, tumingin lang kasi tayo minsan sa output. So kunwari sinabi natin na ganito, nakapagbigay tayo ng 10 karabaw sa farmers. However, yung outcome and yung long-term impact, hindi natin nagawa, no? Hindi natin natingnan if meron ba talaga itong long-term contribution para ma-alleviate yung mga kababayan natin sa kahirapan. So binigay mo nga sila ng karabaw. Did it result to a long-term outcome and impact wherein naka-cross sila sa poverty line? Next slide, Mr. Ayan. So when asked about the success and failure of the above mentioned programs, no, the key informant interviews have varied response. Successful programs, according to them, were identified as those which help in creating additional sustainable income. Again, we will highlight sustainable income because meron kasi tayong mga programs na one-time income or for the sake of nakabigay tayo ng intervention. This is for the beneficiary. So, allowing access to basic social services and facilities created employment opportunities, developing facilities and infrastructure, and providing free education for all. So, when it comes to gaps and in advocacies, policies and programs, the failure was attributed to various reasons, but mostly the lack of monitoring evaluation. As sabi ko nga kanina, lagi tayo nagfo-focus sa outcome, whether na-implement mo natin yung project or hindi, but yung monitoring and evaluation on whether the impact of these programs have truly helped yung ating mga kababayan. So, malaki yung gap dito because minsan kahit na-identify natin na hindi talaga effective yung program, minsan nahihirapan tayo to change or implement a new kind of program to address the identified na problema. Next slide, please. So, what are the other poverty issues and concerns that were not addressed by the program? No? So, first, sabi ko nga kanina, permanent employment. May mga programs tayo or interventions na hindi naman talaga nagpo-provide ng permanent employment. So, sabihin na natin, I would not like to speak ill of the 4-piece program, pero meron kasi mga ibang practices na instead gamitin yung pera to create business and everything, since walang monitoring on how these families are making them, minsan nagiging dependent na lang sila sa ayuda ng gobyerno, and for the period na nakakatanggap sila ng ayuda, hindi naman yun nag-provide ng permanent employment sa kanila. Although some nga may ginamit yon, pero karamihan talaga sa kanila, since unskilled nga sila, wala silang tawag nito, experience kung paano gumawa ng business or for their own livelihood. So hindi yun nakapag-generate ng permanent employment. Also, although nag-improve yung industry and services sector natin, yung wages natin for the agriculture workers is hindi nag-improve. Barely improve, no? So kahit sabihin natin na yumaman yung mga tao sa industry and services sector, hindi natin pwede sabihin na yumaman yung mga tao natin na nasa agriculture sector because barely nag-improve yung salary and wages nila. Also, there is a need for capital support for business. Ito din yung sinasabi namin na karamihan kasi sa mga farmers natin, nafo-force sila mag-loan sa mga middle industries, no? Kasi mahirapan sila mag-loan sa government because napakaraming requirement ng government, no? Tinitingnan ng government kung makakabayad ka ba or hindi, and etc. Kaya minsan nafo-force yung mga farmers natin na mag-utang sa mga middle people, wherein malaki yung interest na hindi nila nababayaran. In the end, mafo-force sila magbenta ng karabaw, mafo-force sila magbenta ng lupa nila, and in the long term, hindi pa rin na-address yung poverty problem nila. In fact, mas nalulubong pa sila sa utang. Second is the land reform. No? Ito nga yung sinasabi namin, karamihan sa ating agriculture sector workers, hindi nila pag-aari yung lupa na nire-reform nila. Mostly, since binayad sa utang or since wala silang capital, nabenta nila or ang may-ari nito is a middle person or yung corporation mismo. So the fact na hindi sila ang may-ari nito, pwede silang baratin na bilhin yung mga na produce nila na crops or na raw materials, and that still contributes bakit hindi sila nakaka-alleviate sa kanilang poverty. Also, meron tayong mga far-flung areas wherein there are no access to government programs, no. However, alam naman po natin na na-address na to so far ngayon because of a lot of programs, especially yung LCAC, wherein kahit yung kaduluduluhan ng mga armed conflict areas is inaabot natin. And lastly is the scholarship. Sabi nga namin kanina, the root cause of this is because yung education attainment ng mga constituents natin. The fact na low level yung kanilang education attainment, they are forced to work at low level and low paying jobs. Next slide. So now we take a look back into the GRDP and poverty relationship, no, para makita natin kung bakit hindi talaga nag-improve yung poverty despite the GRDP, no. So yung GRDP kasi mini-measure niya yung economic growth of production by aggregate industries, no. Poverty incidence naman represent a proportion deprived of monetary indicators of welfare which is measured at the household level, no. So while it is expected that economic growth should be necessary to reduce monetary poverty, the quality of economic growth is very important. Is it inclusive or is it exclusive? So alam naman po natin na based sa ating economic growth, hindi po siya inclusive. It's very exclusive sa industry and services sector. So napag-iwanan po yung ating agriculture sector, wherein yung agriculture sector natin houses majority ng ating poor households. Next slide, Mr. Ayan. So economic growth in the region and in the country may have been strong, but it has not been inclusive, no. High levels on income inequalities have made economic growth greatly large economic growth benefit, no, yung mga high income classes which are largely dependent on sectors outside of agriculture. So ito yung sinasabi natin, yung mga mayaman mas lalong yumaman, yung mga mahirap nagstay sa hirap or mas lalong humirap. So yung GRDP kasi kino-compute lang niya yung productivity outcome. So technically kung yumaman yung isang industry, talaga mako-compute yun as a growth in the economy. However, the question is, naramdaman po ba yun ng ating mga constituents, which is, as indicated here, hindi nila naramdaman. Next slide. So for the period 2010 to 2015, employment in the region has been dominated by the agri, no? So ito nga yung sabi namin. Majority of the poor, including those surveyed for this study, are dependent on agriculture, which had the least growth among the major sectors of the region. Next slide. Next slide, yan. So, here lies the question. Is agriculture to be blamed why we are performing poor in terms of poverty? So, naging dependent kasi tayo sa agriculture. Ma-blame ba natin yung agriculture? Bakit mataas yung poverty natin? So, mamaya, we will answer that later. However, let me read this first. With recent data on the labor market suggesting a shift away from the agriculture sector into the more productive sectors of the economy, it was observed that there was a reduction in poverty in the region as recently reported by PSA for the first semester of 2018. Agriculture din po kasi daw is also prone to fluctuation since it is vulnerable to climate and other factors which severely affect the output, causing further negative impact to the poor. So, is agriculture to be blamed? Next slide please, Mr. Ayan. So, is agriculture to be blamed or should we step away in developing our agriculture sector? The answer is no, because agriculture is still very important, and it is important because it causes a chain development for the industry and services sector. I would like to reiterate this. Yes, nag-improve po tayo sa industry and services sector, but yung pinanggalingan ng improvement is because of our agriculture sector. Take for example dito sa industry natin, tumaas yung industry natin because of the manufacturing. So kunwari, coconut, pinackage mo siya into a coconut drink na nilagyan mo ng label. Yung outcome kasi nun is registered sa industry sector. Hindi na siya registered sa agri sector. If you talk about raw materials, kunwari naka-harvest tayo ng coconut, it's a production in the agri sector. However, if meron nang na-include na processing, manufacturing, and labeling, na nare-record na kasi siya sa industry sector. So technically, ang industry and services sector natin naging strong because of the foundation of our agri sector. So agriculture is still very important. Ang problema lang is napag-iwanan tayo in the development of our agriculture sector. Yung mga naiwan sa agri sector natin, hindi pa siya nakapag-adapt ng technological innovations, no. So that's one of the things that we should address sa issue na to. So what should we do? As a clear picture of the relationship of the contributing factors and in advocacies of the solution proposed, so kailangan natin ng agri-related recommendations, the reinforcement of the RR programs, the improvement and accessibility of incentivizing tertiary education, and last is the inventory of labor demand and supply. Next slide, please. So ito yung mga sinuggest namin na programs. So there needs to be an expansion of the marginal and small farmers and fisher folks, no. So it is very important na ma-improve natin yung profiling natin ng mga poor farmers and fisher folks. Next slide please, Sir Ayan. So bibilisan ko na lang po yung recommendations, no. So ang sinasabi namin dito, farmers should be taught of processing techniques that will move their products up in the value chain. Kasi yun nga yung naging problema, no. Raw products yun yung nabebenta nila ng very small price. Yung nagkaka-income is yung mga middle persons wherein nalalagyan nila ng value added yung product. So there should be a intervention wherein natuturuan natin from the grassroots mismo yung farmers na mag-process ng kanilang products. Next slide please. Sige po, next slide na lang. So for reducing barriers to loans, ito din po yung sabi namin, kailangan yung government mag-provide sila ng loaning incentives sa ating mga farmers wherein kayang-kayang bayaran ng mga farmers natin na walang ganong interest, because ito yung isa sa nakikita naming problem, nababaon daw sa utang yung mga poor families natin na nasa agriculture sector because may mga utang sila sa middle people. And then na-force sila ibenta yung mga agriculture assets nila, further dipping them down into the poverty line. Next slide please. The next is the reinforcement of the RR programs, no. We all, as stated earlier, hindi natin dapat sisihin yung agriculture sector. However, it is very susceptible to disasters. That is why there should be a strong disaster intervention sa ating agriculture program, wherein kailangan natin turuan ng intercropping yung mga farmers natin, wherein kung alam natin na may peste for corn, they could interchange to palay and corn and other crops interchangeably para po hindi sila malugi. Kasi minsan yung mga farmers natin, ang alam lang is rice. So rice lang yung tanim nila, then may peste sa rice, and then nalugi tuloy sila. Next slide please. Next slide please. The second to the last is the improving the accessibility and incentivizing the tertiary education. So kailangan po talaga natin ma-assure na may free education sa college level mismo, hindi lang sa elementary or high school, because sa college level naman po kasi talaga yung important, because that is what will determine ano yung mga trabaho na malaland ng ating mga constituents dito sa Region 12, no. So kung high school lang or elementary ang napagtapos nila, technically they will be forced to work at low paying jobs. Next slide please. Next slide please. Sige pa po. So the last is the inventory of labor demand and supply. So ito yung napapansin namin, although meron tayong free education, but yung jobs fitting natin is very problematic. So kung matatandaan nyo, yung nursing time dati, 'di ba? Very in demand yun siya. So napakaraming estudyante sa Region 12 ang nag-enroll sa nursing. However, the availability of nursing jobs in Region 12 is hindi gano'n ka-sufficient. Therefore, nag-result to sa mga graduates natin, although graduates sila, still they were forced to work in low-paying jobs that is not in line sa anong napagtapos nila. So kailangan natin magkaroon ng inventory ng labor demand and supply para hindi tayo ma-force na mag-offer ng low-paying jobs sa ating mga professionals. Next slide, please. So for the conclusion, economic growth has not always translated into reduction of poverty incidence, no, due to the presence of barriers that prevent some sectors. That is why the government must look beyond the numbers and figures. So minsan, at this point, dapat wag tayo maniwala na, malago yung ekonomiya namin. So technically, walang mahirap sa amin because technically, it's not true, no? So we should look beyond numbers and figures and give meaning to the statistics to make way for better policies, programs, and projects that lead into growth. This growth must facilitate the creation of employment opportunities, allow everyone to participate in the economic growth, and continue to reduce mass poverty. So I think that sums up my report. Thank you very much.
Approach to mitigate the effects of this phenomenon. Innovations that will promote development amidst the current situation and the promotion inclusivity where no one is left behind. I hand the floor over my colleague. I would like to remind everyone for the following. We have an online attendance sheet and evaluation form. So please, if you haven't filled them out, please do check our chat box and the comment section via Facebook Live and YouTube. As for the open forum, if you have any questions or queries you would like to raise, you can raise your hand by prompting the raise hand icon at the bottom end of your screens so that we can recognize you, or you may also type your questions at the chat box or the comment section. With that, let me introduce the moderator for the open forum. He is currently connected with Dole Philippines as a food technologist under Product Development and Innovation Department. He spearheads product and process development through continuous research and experimentation. He is a graduate of BS Food Technology at the University of Philippines, Mindanao. And at present, he is earning a master's degree in Sustainable Development, major in Sustainable Economic Development at the Mindanao State University, General Santos City. Ladies and gentlemen, our very own class president, Mr. Ray J. Caobalejo. Sir?
Thank you so much for the introduction, Ms. Gwen. All right, so at this point, we'll be entertaining questions from the attendees of this webinar. As earlier said by Ms. Gwen, you can type in your questions at the chat box or commenting it on our live stream platforms on Facebook or on YouTube. So let us get the ball rolling. We have a question from Mr. Keno Hinampas, which is addressed to Ms. Arian Shane Valdez-Nebran. His question is, how do I practice waste management at home? Ms. Arian?
Thank you, Sir Ray, for that wonderful question. So how can we manage our waste in home? So first is to not produce waste. So if possible, let's limit the usage of plastics. Cut or destroy the disposable face mask. Seal the bag when it is 2/3 full. And if it's possible, ililabel natin yun siya since very prone yung mga garbage collector natin, lalo na ngayon sa pandemic. And if possible talaga, stop littering and always disinfect surroundings sa bahay. And let's not forget to separate and keep the recyclable materials and the TRs, the reuse, reduce, and recycle. Again, thank you, Sir Ken, for the question.
All right, thank you, Ms. Arian, for the tips, and I hope we can practice this in our very homes. We will do our best to attend to your questions at this limited time, so just keep sending them. We have another question from Ms. Lovely Jane Martin. This is addressed to Mr. Judd Nicole Yunar. What is Region 12's strategy to address the development issues in the agricultural sector? Sir Judd?
Thank you very much, Ma'am Lovely, for that question. So if you will look into our regional development for 2016 to 2022, the main strategy to address or to further improve our agriculture sector is on the promotion of agribusinesses, no. So as stated ko nga earlier kanina, ang problema kasi kung na-manufacture na yung agri-product, it is registered in the industry sector. So technically, we should make our agri-products as agribusiness, no. So from the harvest alone, i-capacitate na natin yung ating mga yung mga farmers, fisher folks to have added values sa ating raw products, and in turn make it as an agribusiness, because agribusiness technically mare-register siya sa agriculture sector. So this will further improve yung level of payment and level of income sa ating agriculture sector, while improving and innovating yung ating manufacturing and industry. So I think that's the answer for that question.
All right, thank you so much, Sir Jed, for your kind explanation. We will be entertaining more questions, and we thank our speakers for their kind indulgence for this online session. So moving on to the next question, this is from Ms. Doreen Mabalyar for Sir Ian John. Do you think that overpopulation is directly responsible for the destruction of the planet? And do you think mankind's extinction will help the planet recover? Sir Ian?
Good evening. Thank you for that question, Ms. Doreen Balyar. Regardless of the reason why the environment or the world today is experiencing its troubles, we have to indicate the fact that population itself or population growth itself is one of the contributing factors, kasi when there's a lot of population, people tend to compete for resources, and when there's competition, there's market, there's demand, and when there's demand, multiple conflicts would arise, and that would generate a lot of externalities. Mostly of these externalities are negative, so like political conflict or health issues like the pandemic, and even social inequalities. So if I'm asked if the world would heal if humankind will be extinct, I think yes. Kasi only as tayo lang naman dito ang yung mga ginagawa kasi ng tao, yung processes natin is unnatural. Para siyang anomaly. Whereas kung pababayaan mo yung world itself, like hayaan mo lang yung mga hayop without human intervention, they can exist. I mean, and they can control and regulate themselves. So that's all. Thank you.
All right, so I think in relation to the question earlier, Sir Ian John, we also have a question from Mr. Sherwell Matalandang. Do you think Region 12 is already overpopulated? And if not, do you think the COVID-19 pandemic is one of the many forces of nature to solve overpopulation?
Thank you for that question again, Mr. Sherwell Matalandang. Based on our records, Region 12 is moderately populated pa. Hindi siya underpopulated, and at the same time hindi siya overpopulated. But at the same time, we are already experiencing the symptoms na papalapit na yung region natin when it comes sa paglobo ng populasyon, which is evident lalo na sa mga cities natin ngayon na uso na yung traffic congestions that were not present 10 to 15 years ago. So it's a proof na marami ng tao and napaparami ng tao, and it's something that we need to address. When it comes to COVID-19, we can say that these things like viruses is a natural means for the world to cure itself. Kasi hindi naman siya created by humans eh. So I think there's a partial possibility that these pandemics can help in reducing the population, or it's a way of the world to regulate itself. But I'm not really saying that it's coordinated by the environment or Mother Nature. Pero parang it can help as a tool. kahit pakinggan natin na parang morbid siya pakinggan, parang gano'n din na nangyari. Like, nung nag-start ang COVID-19, we can see the positive effects like luminis yung hangin, medyo nawala din yung congestion kasi natigil yung mga natural yung mga usual human processes like yung mga factories or yung industries, medyo nag-slow down sila. So, pati yung consumption din ng mga tao is bumagal din kasi nalaman nila na scarce pala yung mga resources natin. So, biglang dumahan-dahan. So, in a way, it healed the world. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that answer, Mr. Ian John. In the interest of time and to manage it well, we will be entertaining the last question from Doc Alfand Marldy Closas to Mr. Ian John again. No, so the question is, would you legalize abortion to control population? Why or why not?
Thank you for the question, para nauulan yata sa akin. Pero if we are going to set aside our moral or religious standards, kung wala tayong mga bias na ganyan, I think we should legalize that. Kasi having a kid is an option. So kung ayaw mo, or parang sa tingin mo is parang hindi ka pa prepared, you can always go away with that. But of course, kasi mabigat siya na issue because we are dealing with human lives here. So, yung question na yan, yung parang approval na yung approval or ng approval ng the consensus regarding approving or disapproving abortion depends really kung nasa ang context kayo. Like kung sa Pilipinas, syempre maraming magagalit diyan because first of all, culturally speaking, ingrained tayo sa belief na we should not impede human lives. Basta nasa tiyan na o nasa sapupunan na, hindi na siya pwedeng patayin. Pero kung nasa mga other countries tayo na iba yung pananaw when it comes sa hindi sila masyadong ingrained sa religion or sa yung morality nila is iba, acceptable sa kanila kasi nga option 'yan. That's a choice, that's a human choice that we have to kwan. Pero sa Pilipinas, I think there should be a move na to legalize it. Pero I think with the current situation or the current culture that we have, malabo siya. So at this point, what we can do is yung prevention is better than cure. So kung hindi mo kaya mag-abstain kasi malibog ka, well, you can try to use contraceptives. Yun lang. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for those words of wisdom, Sir Ian John. And I would like to thank everyone for their active participation. And I hope you will be able to apply the knowledge we have learned from tonight's online sessions. We will forward all unanswered questions to the speakers so that they can connect offline with our participants. We also request all participants to please complete the evaluation form. Link is posted in the chat box. Thank you once again for staying and for your kind attention. Over to you, Ms. Gwen.
Thank you so much for all the questions from our participants and the concise answers from our speakers. Also, a huge thank you for our moderator, Mr. Ray. Before we proceed to the last part of our program, we will be awarding a certificate of appreciation to our 3 speakers this evening. Let me read the citation. Mindanao State University, General Santos City, Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Mr. Ian John M. Lagare, LPT, ENP, Ms. Arian Shane V. Nabran, Engineer Jod Nicole L. Leonor, ENP, for dedicating their invaluable time as a resource person during the SDS 296 webinar series entitled Streamlining Various Developmental Issues in Region 12 on June 26, 2021 at 6 p.m. live streamed via Google Meet, YouTube, and Facebook Live. You have our utmost gratitude for all the insights you were able to share with us. To end our program, I would like to call on our active Class Vice President, Ms. Doreen May Inocente Vallar, for the closing remarks. Ms. Doreen, let's take it away.
Thank you, Ms. Gwen. Good evening to everyone. And on behalf of the 2021 SDS 296B class of MSU Johnson Graduate School Sustainable Development Studies Program, it would be my great honor and pleasure to thank our resource persons, Mr. Ian John Lagare, Ms. Ariane Shane Vinabran, and Engineer Jude Nicole Elionar for sharing with us how their respective local governments and agencies have been doing on the matter of certain developmental issues here in Region 12. Just quickly, I would like to share this insight on the webinar. One thing that all the presentations had in common is the issue on poverty, whether it's in the form of overpopulation or solid waste management. Poverty sets off these developmental issues. So what can we do? For a start, I think finding specific and sustainable solutions to these issues would, in a way, reduce the effects of poverty and maybe eventually eliminate it entirely. But that's just me. So anyway, I would like to thank the team behind the success of this webinar, most especially our technical duo who are also our speakers tonight, Ian and Judd, who have been at it since our first webinar. And I'm really proud and happy of the results of all the hard work we've all done in the past few weeks. And I'm also very thankful to our brilliant instructor, Dr. Ava Claire Marie O'Robles, for providing us the support and direction that we needed throughout the duration of the 3 webinars. And finally, to our participants who have stayed up to this point, thank you so much. And we truly hope that you've learned a lot. We're grateful for this amazing turnout, especially on the interesting discussion that we had during the open forum. I wish everyone the best, and please keep safe. Now, before I end, I would like to remind everyone of the evaluation form. Again, it's posted on the chat box, so please take the time to answer it, as we will be providing certificates for you. And I guess that's it. Thank you so much, and good evening once again.
Thank you so much for that wonderful message, Ms. Doreen. And that ends our webinar. We are grateful for all who have participated and stayed up until the end. On behalf of the SDS 296B class and our presenters, thank you so much for joining us. Keep safe and good evening.